Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live conversation with the GrowSuper. And I'm Irina, and I'm developer relations. I'm from developer relations team at R3, and today with me, David Baxter, CTO of GrowSuper, and Stefan Yago, head of solutions design at GrowSuper as well. And I will be interviewing them today with Ashutosh, who is from developer relations team as well. So welcome everyone. And I'm running, hi David and hi Stefan.
Hi Irina.
Hey, how are you?
So I'm running this session today, and I will start asking questions to David, and Ashutosh will be checking the audience for the questions. So please, if you have any questions, just post them in the chat. And after like 15 minutes, I will pause, and Ashutosh will read all the questions that you ask. So please, if you have anything, if you want to ask or clarify, just please put it in the chat, and we'll ask them immediately, like every 15 minutes. So, by the way, like Ashutosh is based in Mumbai, I'm in London, and David Stefan is in Sydney. And how about you guys out there? Where are you based? If you could put in the chat in which city you're located, so kind of know where our audience is from, so it would be easy for us to kind of like to discuss with you, so we know David would know how much he should explain, because I think so. Today we are talking about capital markets and example in superannuation. And so, so how much you need to explain and compare with other countries, how it works. Hello. So we have Babak. He's in Perth, Saurav in Sydney, and Nigamananda is in Singapore, and Sean in Singapore. So like, hi guys, it's really nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So so yeah, it's really great to see like people in Singapore and in Australia. Like it's a great time of the year. Then now it's very cold in London. It's like, I think now it's 4 degrees. So so yes, let's start our interview. David, thank you so much for joining, and Stefan, I'm really glad to to have you with us. If you could like explain us in the kind of who are you, and when and how did you start?
Hi Irina, how are you going? So yeah, David Baker. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Grow, and I've been here, and Steph's been here since the company first started. So Grow started about 5 years ago. And before that, I've got about 20 years of experience in sort of growing and scaling SaaS platforms, which is a little bit different to what we do now. And I'll let Steph introduce himself.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Stefan. I'm the head of solution design currently at Grow. So I more started as a developer on a sort of direct-to-consumer application, and then moved into the blockchain side of things. So it's been really great working on the Corda platform, and looking forward to talking about it.
Mm-hmm. So thank you guys. It's like it's great to have you with us, and the whole company is super exciting. And would you mind to explain what is the company is doing, and how you guys shaping the world now?
Yeah, of course. So we started as GrowSuper about 5 years ago. We originally launched as a business consumer retail superannuation or pension fund. So we provided that front end for members. And the reason we went into it in the first place is we wanted to improve the experience that people have with pension. Generally, it's sort of a black box that people don't think about, even though over their lifetime, it's one of the biggest single assets they'll ever have, particularly in Australia, where superannuation is mandated. So 9.5% of your salary goes into superannuation every year. Your employer pays that. So it becomes a very big nest egg over years. But people were very disconnected with it. They didn't really think about it. It was very complicated. So we wanted to make that a bit more transparent. And we did that by utilizing technology. We launched a mobile app that was allowing members to not only join, but to be able to interact with their superannuation. Over time, we had some great success with that. won a few awards along the way as well. But what we found was, the way we wanted to improve that experience for members was really hindered by kind of the back end, if you like. Superannuation in Australia generally is quite an outsourced operation. There's quite a few different players in the market, everything from the fund itself that we played, which is kind of the marketing arm, the member-facing side. Then you've got the administration that does all the back-end processing. Superannuation has insurance parts to it as well. There's custodians who are obviously dealing with the money and moving the assets around, and also a trustee who's another party that looks after the best interests of the members. And as is the case in most financial services, all those different organisations are all running very different systems, all to deal with the same single record. And so, we spent a lot of time reconciling records between what we had and what all those other partners had. And there was inevitably issues and errors along the way because there was still a lot of manual processes involved in that. And we could not advance, our business being hindered by what was in the back end there. So after several challenges and attempts at trying to get the rest of the industry to move forward, we decided that we'd build our own back end and their own processes to modernise that process. So we looked at all the things that we wanted to solve. We wanted sort of a modern interface into that. We wanted really to solve the issue with reconciliation and have that single point of truth. We also needed a way that we could trace really the provenance of the records, see where errors were made, and be able to resolve those quickly. And after much research, we sort of fell on DLT as a possible solution and looked at a few DLT providers, and eventually went to Corda, mainly because of the way that Corda distributes and isolates data across the network and permissions it. We looked at others where the logical permissioning was really not enough security for our clients to really buy into DLT. They didn't really like the idea of their data sitting on their competitors' nodes, even if it couldn't be seen. So that's really why we landed on Corda in the end. So that was in the beginning of 2018, we started this project, building out the registry platform, as it's called, and the process management systems that sit in front of that. It's been a hard slog. We're about to launch our first client fund on the platform's called Tina. That will be in May, and we'll have a second fund coming on board in about September of this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds amazing, and the problem that you are solving. So the problem that you are solving is with this pension fund. If you can kind of explain like what the difference between like these like GrowSuper and other funds. I saw on your website growsuper.com that you have app as well, which is super useful for people, because I'm the same, like I have no idea what's going on with my pension, and like how is it, like what problem are you solving that wasn't solved before?
Well, really, from a front end point of view, member experience point of view, there really was very little in the market at that time of ways for members to interact with their superannuation. They might be able to log in perhaps and see their balance, but generally the interactions you would have would be once a year you'd receive a paper statement in your letterbox that would tell you about it, and you'd file that and forget about your superannuation, maybe until you're retired. And the biggest problem we saw with that at that time is because people weren't engaged, many people just expected that they'd retire and their superannuation would be there to get them through their retirement, really having no idea just what the shortfall was, that the money just wasn't there because they hadn't put enough away and they hadn't made other arrangements for their assets as well. So we really wanted to improve the education that could happen there, and really just to improve the general financial well-being of everybody through, and not just through our fund, but to be able to, ideally we wanted to be able to on-sell that front-end technology onto other funds, but really that back-end non-integration was the issue that we needed to solve. In the end, it wasn't really that the front-end experience.
Yeah,
The benefit, I suppose, of the offering as well is, as Dave said, it's partly about our own fund, but also about the whole ecosystem, I suppose, because if you, in superannuation, you have a lot of background processes like, custodial services, insurance, general fund administration. And I think a lot of the older systems, it's generally accepted that processes are done in a certain way, even though they may not make a lot of sense. And maybe they're done that way because they're using older technology. So it really gave us an opportunity to think a bit more about those processes, what pain points they are in superannuation as a whole, and how we can fix them by not only adopting distributed ledger, but also building a whole new platform from scratch.
So for people who is outside of Australia, superannuation means pension. And so, yeah, David, if you could explain like how does distributed ledger fits into the picture? Why is it like, why you need it there?
Yeah, if you look at the current state of the way that superannuation is administered, there's generally the administration process is outsourced, and there's a couple of major players in the market here who have between about 70% of the market. But if you look at the way that they deal with their clients, there's several hundred superannuation funds, big and small, in Australia. But each one of those, in the current situation, before our platform, was built on is managed on a platform that is somewhere between 10 to 30 years old over time, and is run on a single instance. So every single fund or every single product has its own instance of this system that needs to run. So the administration of it means if you want to administer more than one fund, you need to log out of one and log into the other, change terminals and whatnot. So it's quite cumbersome in that way. But on top of that, all the other systems that have to plug into that are external, because again, it's old legacy technology. There's not necessarily modern interfaces to be able to transfer data. It's generally done through SFTP and manual processes, generally pulling it into things like Excel and into other databases to be updated. So there's a real possibility, and we've seen it many times, of errors coming out of manual work with the data. So there's this reconciliation, which becomes very expensive over time. We've experienced that ourselves. The cost behind that, and who bears that cost? It's the member. So the person who is in the pension fund or the superannuation fund, their administration costs are higher, and they're missing out on the benefit of compound interest on those fees that they pay. So, we didn't come to this problem with let's do something with DLT or blockchain. We had a problem and went looking for a solution. And being able to have, the most important thing to us was that single point, removing reconciliation, which really equals single point of truth. If we could remove that, it also means that we could enable a lot of other things within the system as well. So most of the processes that happened in the back end were manual, because you couldn't trust the data, because you had to reconcile it between many places before you could even make a decision. So when we build a system where we have trust in the data between all the parties, we can actually start automating processes off the back of that, which means to more that will reduce costs within running the platform, because you can optimize those processes that are there, which is another flow-on benefit to the member as well, and reduce administration fees. And you find generally in superannuation and pension, where you can reduce the cost, that does in the end mean reduced fees to the members and the users of the system, and that's ultimately the best outcome we can have.
Oh wow! So what kind of transactions are you having on Corda? So is it transaction? Is it like every month the chunk of my money for my salary is going to the fund? Is it?
So the way super works is either monthly or generally more quarterly, that your employer will make a payment into your nominated superannuation fund. So you can choose which fund you want to be with, and that will come in and go into your pool of assets within there. So the transaction, there's a number of different transactions go into it. So there is money in, obviously, during the accumulation stage. So before you actually get to retirement age, there's very few opportunities for you to take money out. So it's really just money in. There's obviously things like fees and premiums, because there's insurance in there as well that need to be charged, administration fees. And then maybe there's other tax events that happen within it. So if you want to switch between different investment portfolios and whatnot. So we need to cater for all that. Our use case for Corda is possibly a little bit different than most would do it. So we basically use Corda as our entire database. So we regard Corda as our data layer. So even things like member information, identity records, all those things are kept on Corda as well in an immutable way, so we can have that traceability, as well as transaction data and asset allocations and those sorts of things as well.
Oh wow! So is it so the benefits of Corda here is, as I understand, is to reconcile between two different parties. Is it correct?
That's probably the biggest benefit we have, I guess. In the current situation for administration, funds actually don't really own their data at the moment as well. So that data sits with their administrator, and they might get extracts of it from time to time. So we wanted to enable those funds to be able to provide better experiences, not just for their members, but get better business outcomes as well. So providing them that data all the time, they can interact with it, they can query it, they can do all those different things, which means that they can build more and better products for members as well to improve the outcomes.
So Ashutosh, is there any questions from the audience?
I don't see any at this point of time, but yeah, let's just ask the audience if they have any questions. They can just put it on the chat and we can ask our guests.
Okay. Hi guys, if you have any questions, like please message us, and we'll ask David and Stefan just like immediately. So yeah, if you have any questions, please.
Just put it on the chat, or probably even on the Q&A if you like to, and we can ask those to our guests today.
David, before when you started to consider DLT, and did you consider any other DLT or blockchain, or only Corda?
We did a couple of proof of concepts, very small proof of concepts, with, I can take it back now, Ethereum, I think is one that we looked at, Hyperledger Fabric, and Corda. And looking at them, Ethereum and Hyperledger were, I mean, they've advanced quite a lot since that time. So we're going back, over 3 years ago now. And even Corda was, in its early stages, I guess. But we also built a pretty good relationship with R3 on the back of our interest in that. And that relationship has continued till now as well. We've found that, and certainly when we've been able to describe where we're going and what we're doing with this technology, R3 has been very supportive and provided us with a lot of help and support along the way too. So it's been a technology aside, it's been a very good choice that we made.
And so are you planning to join the Corda network, or do you have a new network?
So we're currently building up about to put out our UAT in production network. So we will be joining the Corda network as a segregated zone on that network, and that's really down to some security decisions we made with our clients on how they wanted to participate in that network. But at the same time, we think it's important that we have that option to get to a greater global interactivity or interoperability with other business networks as well in the future.
So you have your own. So you're planning to join Corda network, but you're building your own as well.
No. So we'll be a segregated network on the Corda network. So.
Okay. Yeah. So. Do you have any questions? Or
Nothing from the audience at this point of time. Yeah. So I believe you guys just mentioned that you would be going into production sometime. So currently you're just on the development phase, is it?
Yeah. So we've been in development for 3 and a bit years now. We've run some sort of quasi-production environments in the past. But we're now really building out that infrastructure for the UAT and production network. So our base network has 5 nodes on it. That's for a single fund, and other funds join. We add additional nodes for their insurer, custodian, fund, etc. over time. So we are, I didn't mention, we're AWS sort of primarily based. We're very much in the cloud. We don't run on-premise equipment. So we sort of take advantage of the scalability and sort of auto scaling that we can get in that as well.
Okay, cool. I think before we move on, we have some questions pouring in from the audience. So let's just take them. So there's a question from Daniel. So he asked, where do we see FSI enterprise blockchain adoption in 1 to 3 years? Will private blockchain remain, or will public blockchain evolve to handle private use cases? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is sort of the strategy we're looking at over the next few years and starting to engage with partners there. There certainly is appetite for blockchain, particularly in that registry space, because you do see, not just in superannuation, but in all capital markets and wealth management, many different systems being used to manage either the same asset or the same member across many different assets. And one of the biggest issues there is identity, having to KYC the same person over and over again across all those different systems. So there's real appetite to find a way to have that single point of truth of either an asset or an identity or an individual, to be able to reduce costs, but also improve that member experience, make it easier for people to invest in any sort of instrument at all. So we're seeing, I think when we started, it was very difficult. We had to explain what blockchain and what DLT was as much as what our solution was. I think the understanding of the market is much better now than it was then. And there is real general interest in now how can they actually use this technology to use it to solve problems that they've got in their business.
Yeah, definitely. I think the technology space itself is evolving very fast, and it's very difficult to predict how things will be like 3 years down the line. So currently, we'll have to take decisions based on what we have at this point of time, right? So yeah, there are a lot of more questions. Let's take them one after the other. So what do you suggest we should do if we want to know how blockchain can help in our current business? They are in the insurance industry. Do you have anything to say to them?
It's a good question. I guess it comes down to the processes and understanding where the reconciliation is. I think if you start with, where is that wastage reconciliation within your business? Where are you taking system information across multiple systems? And then what's the possibility of then putting those into something like a blockchain or DLT? I think it's also important, one of the decisions we made very early was that we had to build a system that could integrate with legacy as well. There's no point building, the system of the future if it can't work with the systems of today. So there needs to be thought about how those are sort of at the frontiers of your network, how you work with those legacy systems as well. So, we have instances where, despite our modern platform and network, we deal with a particular custodian that still likes to receive faxes for orders for buys and sells. So our system has to be able to integrate with that as well. So they're the things. You don't try to reinvent everything and bring along, try to lift up the whole ecosystem at a time, choose the bits, but make them integratable.
Yeah, that seems to be a very decent approach. Well, I think people are interested to have a look at some of the demos or anything that you have of your platform. Is it possible to do that?
We're just launching a new website this week, which is for Grow.inc, which has a bit more about our technology and less about, I guess, our front-end fund. And I think there's animations in there, not so much demonstrations at the moment, but we'll start feeding some content into that as we build out that website. So that's probably the best place to go. And through that, you can also get in touch with us if you want to see more as well.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So I guess we have something coming in the next few days. All right. So yeah, there is another quite interesting questions. I think this is one from the business side, which most of the people will ask. So they asked that it's from Cedric. So he is asking, did you face any challenges to explain DLT benefits to your clients? And how did you got your first client on board?
Yeah, look, I think the problem we had when we started, this is mid 2018, I guess, by the time we started rolling out to members and got a roadshow, that was kind of in the middle of a Bitcoin frenzy as well. So whenever we mentioned DLT or blockchain, everyone's minds went to Bitcoin. So trying to explain to people that DLT is not the same as Bitcoin was probably the most difficult part to start with. Over time, I think distributed ledger is sometimes a bit harder to describe than if you call it a shared ledger. I think people understand that a little bit better. So it's important the language that you use when you're describing it. And I think really emphasizing the benefits of what it is. What is it removing? What's the waste that you're getting rid of? What's that reconciliation? What's the benefits you can get from having, that single point of truth? I know I've gone on about it a bit. But it's not just that the data, but the optimizations that you can build off the back of that as far as processes and how you can really reinvent the business processes that you have.
Yeah, I think this is one of the questions which we get from most of our business audience. I think this should give them some direction as to how to handle clients when they ask about your DLTs to you and how it's going to be useful. Well, yeah, so thanks guys, thanks for all the questions you have, and also feel free to keep adding more. We'll ask our guests about all the questions. If you have any technical questions as well in terms of how they build the entire network and how they're planning to maintain it going forward, please do ask your questions over here. So let's move on. So I'll dive into some of the technical questions, and let's have a look at what we have from you guys. So so generally, I would like to understand, I mean, how is your network architecture really built up? So how many nodes you have, and how are these nodes at multiple locations? How is the structure of the node tree and stuff? So could you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the general structure of the ledger itself, it's really, I suppose we came at it from like a business sense. So we just thought about who are the, participants or, active parties in the superannuation ecosystem. So, we have our custodian, insurer, trustee, so your regulating body, your funds themselves, your administrator, and then your notary party as well, which should equal 6. If it doesn't, I've missed one. So really the structure of the network, follows those different, roles. And so we will have, as we onboard new clients and things like that, we will create, new funds, new insurers, but they also can be reused across the network as well. In terms of, the, just trying to think, the actual deployment of them as well. So normally they will obviously be deployed on separate infrastructure. We're not using Corda accounts or anything like that. So yeah, in our production network, I think because it is fairly new technology as well, we will be hosting a lot of that ourselves. I don't know if Dave, if you want to talk a bit about that as well. But yeah, so the general structure is really following those business sort of separators of having, administrator, custodian, and things like that. If we go down to then your actual core apps as well. So within the superannuation ecosystem, we have quite a large amount of different state types on system to deal with all the certain things we have to do in the member life cycle. So it's not just about investing money; it's about dealing with things like insurance, family law, beneficiaries. There's quite a huge scope of things we had to deal with, and I think if we knew the complexity of it, we may not have gone down this path in the first place. But here we are. So we actually tried to capitalize on this a bit as well by saying it doesn't make sense really to have a single Corda app specifically for superannuation. If we break down the domain a bit more, we actually have possibilities to generalize them, where we have our core infrastructure, our core state types and things like that. But we can also separate out insurance, we can separate out investments, we can separate out a lot of the other sort of, business partitions within the system, so that we're not only making it easier to work on, but we're also sort of future-proofing ourselves a bit. So we're not tied into super. We can start thinking about things like, identity management. We can start thinking about non-super investment offerings and all that sort of stuff. So, the different nodes we have, the ones that I use the most are probably your fund and administrator relationships. We have our custodian nodes and insurer nodes, but as Dave was saying before, unless we have whole insurance ledgers or, fund management ledgers that we can interoperate with. Often we'll just be more extracting reports out of them and sort of integrating with, more legacy systems. So at the moment, those will sort of are there ready for the future when we sort of can expand those points of integration out and we can interoperate with other ledgers and things like that. But at the current time, the main benefit we get is the fund and administrator relationships. And in that sense, it really makes sense for us to, host those ourselves and manage them. But if someone did want to come along and say, hey, we want to host our own node on our own infrastructure, it's completely fine to do that.
So you manage all the nodes hosting and stuff for your clients, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. So again, on this, again, managing this network infrastructure, so a lot of things comes from how your entire consortium is going to be governed, right? So so who takes care of these decisions regarding to how to add a new node, or if there is a new node that's getting added onto the network? So how do you make sure that everyone is on board into that idea of adding that particular node?
Yes.
Is there a process in there?
So we act as the business network provider. We run the network, and all onboarding is managed through ourselves. That's part of the administrative process we take on for this. And that's really part of the service that we offer. So as Steph mentioned, we offer this platform as a SaaS platform. So even though the nodes are all deployed into sort of separate, distinct environments and accounts, we take on that responsibility for managing and maintaining those nodes. And the reason for that, we looked to, we went to CordaCon a few years ago in London, really to interact with the rest of the Corda community, the business community, and see what was happening as people went into production. And I think that the general consensus was, it's hard enough at this stage to explain what DLT is, but then to get security teams and IT infrastructure teams to understand how to implement that within their own infrastructure and get that through, particularly in financial services, there's a lot of compliance steps you have to go through. It could be a 12 to 18 month project just to get the go ahead to actually implement the infrastructure inside their own environments. So we saw it as more prudent and be able to get quicker to market if we took on that responsibility ourselves and just sort of manage the secure gateways between that infrastructure and their internal infrastructure.
Cool. All right, that sounds really good. I think it's actually going to take some time for people to actually understand how DLT and stuff work, and then they're being ready to actually deploy that on their own or manage it on their own. So till that time, I think it's great to have guys such as you who will be helping them out, right? Do you have any questions, Reena, from the crowd?
Yeah, I have one question from the audience. So it's from Richard Phipps. And he's saying that it's great to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for coming in for doing an interview. And his question is, what does success look like for next 12 months?
Yeah, success all comes down to execution and deployment now. So like I said, we're building out our UAT and production networks. We've got our first client going live end of May. So there's a transition process as well, because they're an existing super fund, so that we have to transition them across from their current providers. There's a lot of ETL and work that goes within that, getting it from their old system into the DLT. And then another client coming on around September of this year as well. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, which is really just about operationalizing the platform. We've spent a lot of time developing it. We're very excited about its functionality and what it can do and the benefits can bring. But now it's about proving that, not just to ourselves, but to the wider market as well. We have a lot of interest from many other funds within superannuation in Australia and also externally as well. And we know that the eyes of the industry are on us, not just in superannuation, because really we're one of the first platforms really doing work of our scale in capital markets in the world, as far as the funds under management that we'll be administering. So there's a lot of people looking to us to see how we do it. So we're very cognizant of that. And I guess operationalizing it after all this development is really our biggest challenge. So as far as success goes, if we're here and talking to you again in 12 months' time and we've got 2 or 3 happy clients on the platform, we're providing automated processes where they were manual before. we're enabling them to reduce the burden of administration fees on their members. And I think we're heading in the right direction.
I think as well, like we've been very much in the application layer side of things. So it'll be very nice within the next 12 months to start looking back at the data layer, what DLT can do for us beyond superannuation and how we can apply it to other problems as well. Like I think we've got a great foundation now that we can build on, and as long as we execute and deliver these things, we've got a really positive ride ahead in terms of talking about, you know, other applications of DLT, how we can work with other people operating, you know, distributed ledger platforms and so on. And personally, for me, I find that really exciting where we can extend what we've done beyond, you know, superannuation.
Perfect. So hopefully we'll meet again in another 1 year and we'll talk about more use cases.
Maybe in person next time.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully things will be better by then. Anyways, so let's move on with a few more questions. I had one question around. So if you look at any enterprise software system, right? So it's made up of multiple different parts, right? So blockchain is like one part of it, and there broader. If you look at a broader picture, it just fits. Blockchain just fits in as a component. So it's really important that we have some sort of integrations with the ledger data and off ledger data, right? So how easy was it, or how difficult was it to have these kind of integrations for you guys? And what are the challenges you faced, or how do you managed all those, or went through and solved any problems that you faced?
So I think broadly we solved that problem by throwing away any other systems we had. Like I think we had the luxury of starting completely from scratch. So we literally decided to use Corda as the centerpiece for our whole application. Obviously, when we start working with other clients and things like that, there are points of integration that we need to sort of, you know, deal with. But in terms of our own internal systems, you know, Corda is the centerpiece, and all the other systems that we have more support it. You know, they more manage things like workflow or, you know, user authentication, role management, you know, all that sort of stuff, but they all sort of feed into the Corda platform as the source of truth. So that's been quite a nice thing actually to deal with, where we could completely start from scratch and rethink about, you know, the whole ecosystem, how things would fit together, and make sure that we adopting a design that, you know, will not only work for this current application, but also sort of future-proof ourselves beyond that. A lot of our discussions, I think, initially were, you know, we talked a lot about the DLT, what it can do, and a lot of people were more interested in the application side of things, you know. So now I think the conversations will start to change towards more, you know, we've got this application logic, we can produce reports and things like that from the system to integrate into your other systems, and that's completely fine. And we sort of expected that from the start. But yeah, just looking forward to the conversations around, you know, interoperation and all that sort of stuff going forward.
Perfect, cool. So is there any sort of migration that you have to do? I think there must be a system running before you launch this, right? So is there any kind of a migration that you need to do?
There certainly is for the clients. Sorry, Steph, you go.
You go, Dave.
I was just going to say that there certainly is for the clients that we bring on, because they've been coming, particularly existing super or pension funds. They're coming from other administration providers and other systems. So we do have this transition process, which is not just data coming across, but it's, you know, translating the business processes into configuration within our system and into the automated workflows where we can as well, and sort of reimagining some of those the products as a configured entity within our system as well. So it is quite a big project to do that transition, but that's not new to us. That's, you know, superannuation funds move between administrators. It's quite usual for them to do that perhaps every sort of 5 to 10 years. So the industry is quite used to those transition processes. It's a little bit different for DLT. And I think probably it makes it a bit easier for funds to transition over time, particularly even if they want to transition off our platform, hopefully onto another DLT platform. But as far as us, like Steph said, you know, we have the luxury of not having any legacy of our own, sort of building our legacy, if you like, which has been, you know, a very nice way to work, I've got to say.
Yeah, that should have done some part of it easier, right? So at least you don't have to deal with multiple integration points with legacy systems.
Yeah.
Something. All right, cool. When you talk about pensions, right, you have individuals would be having these pensions. So how do you manage these users? Do you? I think you mentioned you don't use accounts, but so are these users managed in a separate application anyway?
Yeah, so all our users are managed more through like a service manager, so to speak. So, which allows us to do, things like, different types of authentication, OAuth and stuff like that. So we don't really want the registry system to know about, what administrators are using the system, who's logging in and so on. The main entities that we really care about are the funds, the different products that we have in the system, as well as the identities and members there. So those members, not in the sense of these are the login credentials and things like that. It's more the identity and, the member relationships associated to those identities that define their life cycle within the superannuation ecosystem. And, we generalize that a fair bit as well to ensure that, we can not only use those identities for, superannuation members, but other sorts of associations as well. So yeah, the more the user management is done in an external system.
Okay, perfect. So you would say that it is more of a B2B kind of a use case, or is it a B2C kind of use case?
So the registry system itself is more a B2B use case, but the idea is, we had dealings when we launched our, initial direct-to-consumer app, and we were, integrating with another administrator, and we wanted to offer our members a real-time user experience, but then it's hard to really call it real-time when your main data is sort of fueled by daily extracts and things like that from another system. You don't know how old those extracts are, and you still have to ingest them into your own databases and things like that. So we hope that by adopting DLT, when a member gets created in the admin system, straight away they'll be available in the fund node, which has got 100% API coverage on it as well. So, any other third-party integrators can integrate with our API and actually have real-time views of their member lifecycle and things like that. And again, it's all around that reconciliation. Like, we spent a lot of time working out what data was the source of truth, whether it was in our database or in, the database of our incumbent administrator. We can kind of do away with that now, where we sort of using that Corda data layer to manage that, distribution of data between those different entities, which means we can sort of offer a really nice API that can be used by, other clients to build those, direct-to-consumer apps. And obviously we built one as well, which is a white label application.
All right, perfect. That sounds great. So I'll just pause and see if we have any questions, Arina.
So we have one question from Petko, and he's asking where you are able to calculate TCO of the new attorney and the ROI from the Corda ecosystem, how it compares with the existing solution.
Yeah, so if we compare our offering to incumbents in the market, and we've been doing this through RFP processes. So our current offering is probably in the area of about 40% cheaper than the current administration platforms and offerings that are in the market. And that's a significant, when we think of that administration costs, is really the largest portion of member fees within superannuation and pension. So it can translate to a considerable saving in those fees for members, and sort of flows through to improved returns for them over time.
All right, hope that answers the question. So I'll just go ahead with one more question from my side. One of the things that we see with blockchain, most of the people have this sort of thinking that how good is it when you go to production in terms of performance and stuff. So So is performance a big deal for you guys? And did you do any kind of performance enhancements, any improvisations, anything that would help others understand how these kind of things are done?
Yeah, for sure. I think performance has been, one of the more challenging things when adopting distributed ledger. I think in general, the superannuation ecosystem, it's pretty slow moving in terms of events that occur and what the ledger needs to process. So from that point of view, there aren't a huge amount of concerns, when we started using it around, its performance capabilities and stuff to deal with day-to-day transactions. Even for very large funds, we're not talking, real-time trading or anything like that, which we would eventually like to look towards. But, for the time being, it wasn't really a huge concern. The real concern more came from, when we are ingesting, millions and millions of transactions from external systems, when we're generating, a large number of members and all the sort of data surrounding their life cycle in the other fund. We're talking really large volumes of data, and you can't really just go, insert all this data into the database at one time and off you go, or do bulk deletes or updates or anything like that. Everything needs to go through your Corda flows. So it was really about thinking how we can really optimize that, application layer where we put as little strain on, the data layer as possible. So we've also had a lot of engagement with R3 and a fair bit of help around the performance side of things, because, you have your standard approaches to scale optimization and things like that. But when you're dealing with a new platform, it was really beneficial for us to have a good relationship with Corda, so we could ask hard questions about, things that we weren't really experts on. So we had a lot of help there in terms of, flow structure, how we can batch things better, how we can deal with transactions in different ways to sort of increase performance. So we had some really good results from that. So I think going into production now, we're really confident that we'll be able to manage at scale, not just for, the immediate future, but, going into the future. I think we're quite happy with how everything's falling together, because at the end of the day, it is a challenge, I think, dealing with the performance side of things and the number of transactions that you potentially have to deal with. But it just requires, I suppose, a slight shift in mentality of, we're not dealing with a conventional database. You're dealing with distributed ledger, therefore you have to solve your problem slightly differently. So we were, at the start, put a lot of thought into, okay, if we're producing transactions on the ledger, if we get a unit price coming into the fund, we don't want to have to update all those transactions again. How can we sort of do that more through, the relational nature of your database or other business layers that you can put over the system, so that we're not having to, create heaps of transactional overhead on the system. And I think, thinking a bit differently about it, it's actually helped us solve some problems in really novel ways that have actually given us benefit, not just from a performance sense, but also from a business sense as well. So, it's been a challenge for sure, but it's been quite a good challenge. And I think we not only got benefit from it from a, system performance scalability point of view, but I think, our data structures are quite clean and, maintainable as a result of that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. I think it's pretty much good to hear about that from you guys. I believe it's an evolving technology, and performance will come. I think it's good enough for most of the live applications that people could go into production. But I believe we'll see more better performance as we go into higher versions of Corda. I think Corda 5 will come with significant improvement as well. All right. So do we have anything more, Arina, from the audience?
No, we don't have any more questions. Guys, if you have any questions, please ask.
All right. So we have around 5 to 7 minutes more. So guys, if you think you want to ask anything, you have any kind of doubts, or how these guys are really managing their blockchain systems on Corda, so please feel to put forward your doubts, and we can ask them in the next 5 or 6 minutes. All right. So while we wait for any questions from the audience, so I think since you guys are planning to go into production, right? So there is this need where if you go into production, there's continuous need of monitoring your systems. Like for you, it will be different nodes that will be running on the Corda on your infrastructures, right? So how do you plan to monitor your nodes for any outages or anything? And how do you want? What are the different tools that you're planning to use to do this?
Well, I might just ask Steph to talk about the project we did with R3 on understanding the monitoring tools that we can use within Corda itself. And then I might talk about sort of the broader monitoring.
Yeah, so I think, initially the monitoring tools we used with, the engagement we had around, performance testing and things like that were mainly centered around, managing, bottlenecks and things like that occur. So, a lot of those can be as mundane as sort of logging into your dashboards and sort of seeing what your CPU usage, memory usage is and things like that. So all those are pretty standard to set up as alerts, in production systems and so on. But yeah, using things like, JMeter to sort of understand, how transactions are being processed, doing all sorts of different testing around understanding what the throughput is and sort of fine tuning our node configurations accordingly. We also looked at, and probably a little bit unrelated, but, around the concept of if we, running for 20 years or so, we're going to have quite a lot of transactions on system. Some of them probably aren't used anymore and probably we don't need to maintain. So how can we prune, a database or snip certain chains to sort of, keep the database size, in a reasonable range, and other tools from data recovery as well, where obviously you've got data replicated across the nodes. How can you do health checks and all that sort of stuff to make sure that nodes aren't compromised or everything's running as it should.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for the answer. I think, yeah, Corda, just to let people know that Corda does come with a sort of, I think it gives you all these GMS metrics, which you could use to monitor your nodes. So for the audience, if you haven't tried out, just give it a go. I think it will give you a lot of great information about how your node is performing. All right. So I guess if we do not have any questions,
I have one question. So Ren is asking, is there any cost involved in accessing the network?
For us, so for the costs that we have, we don't have a per transaction cost or anything like that. It's really, we sort of bundle a bunch of services in, so it's not just the network itself, although there is a license fee that's attached to that, but we also have the sort of business process management service that we provide on top of that, which is part consultative, part administration processes on there as well, and also includes all the transition and whatnot as we get onto the system too. So yeah, it's not free, but it's hard to break it down into like an individual transaction cost, if you like.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So yeah.
All right. So I guess it's time we say goodbye to our guests. And thank you, David and Stephen, for joining us today. It was really great talking to you guys and about your use case and about the technical aspects of your network and stuff. Thanks for joining us, and I hope we'll see you again soon in the near future.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We really enjoyed it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
And thanks to all our audience as well for tuning in and listening to us today. And you'll find the recording of this particular session on our YouTube channel soon. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.